Alright guys, so today we're going to be doing CHING number 128. So the first item that I have was a slag glass swang vase. This one was by Kanawa and it glowed under black light. Really pretty. That one sold for $110 and I won that at an auction. I also sold a Catherine Lily White cat head ornament for $9.99. This came from pretty much a yard sale and I paid $1 for it. I still have quite a few of these left. Some are still selling every year close to Halloween. I get a little spurt of sales from them. I also sold a vintage scratch and sniff sticker sheet. These were called Holiday Cheer and that sold for $19.99. So these were the like mellow, smellow, stinky stickers. That sheet in particular came from a shoebox full of vintage stickers that I had won at an auction. So that sheet wasn't from my newest score of those vintage sticker albums. We sold a lot of vintage IBM printer ribbon for $14.99. These actually came from an auction. They were just on some tray of stuff we won. And typically when Eric wins like a tray or box lot of stuff at an auction and there's things on it that we didn't necessarily, you know, try to win, we still look them up and see if they're worth listing so we can get a little bit more money out of the tray or box that we won. I also sold a vintage Polly Pocket compact. This one was called Pocket Bunnies. That sold for $49.99. That came from a private pick that Eric and I had gone to. I know I mentioned I think it was in one of my CHING videos, how I had gone back to a house where I had gone to a yard sale previously, and I had exchanged numbers with the lady and she has been slowly selling me more vintage toys. So she did at one point find some more Polly Pockets and sold them to me, and I actually purchased a couple more vintage toys from her. So hopefully I can get some more from her, but you know, it's a process. Next item went to a subscriber named Jackie. She purchased a pair of Birkenstock sandals. These ones had roses on them and they sold for $69.99 and they came from an auction. Next item also came from an auction. Eric and I won like a bunch of these men's like patriotic looking summer suits. They were by a company called Oppo Suits. That sold for $34.99. These are definitely slow sellers, but they do go every now and then, typically kind of close to like the 4th of July. I also sold a vintage Little Mermaid stationery set. This actually came from a box lot that I had won at an auction that sold for $19.99. I also sold an It Cosmetics finishing powder for $29.99. Also came from an auction, one of the beauty auctions I'm always talking about. The next couple of items all came from the same auction. It was a doll auction. These were all Mary Hoyer dolls that I had won at the auction. The first one, she was dressed in like a pink dress that sold for $99.99. The next one was actually called Sweet Innocence. She also sold for $99.99. This next one, this one was one of my favorites. She was wearing an acorn dress, this doll. She also sold for $99.99. And same with this next one, in a polka dot dress, sold for $99.99. So I've never come across Mary Hoyer dolls out in the wild. The only time I ever found them was at an auction. Let's see. I also sold a German pottery wall plaque for $15.99. This either came from a yard sale or with some stuff in a box lot I won at an auction. Also sold an Ellie Smith clear iridescent glass swung vase for $155. This one I'm pretty sure came from an auction. Same way with this next one, came from one of the folk art auctions we had gone to. This was another Minnow wooden folk art piece of a pumpkin that sold for $39.99. And here again is another Mary Hoyer doll. This one was in a blue floral dress. She actually sold for $150.37. So more people were interested in her. We sold a really large Griswold cast iron chicken frying pan for $200. Eric had won that at an auction. This next item was also another Minnow wooden piece from the folk art auction. This one was of a bird that sold for $64.99. I also sold a Philosophy airbrush makeup for $39.99, and that came from one of the beauty auctions. I was buying a lot of Philosophy that day. Next item also came from an auction. This was a Limoges trinket box depicting a fox hunt that sold for $249.99. Next item was a Disney Donald Duck conductor figure. He was dressed up like a train conductor. That sold for $49.99. That came from an auction, and you guys might recently remember a haul that we had won the Mickey Mouse versions, and I was saying like I already sold the Donald Ducks like a long time ago, and then all of a sudden the Mickey versions showed up at the auction. So I was kind of wondering why they were sold separately. I don't know. Next was actually a metal rain gauge by Lowell Davis that sold for $56.55. I won that at the folk art auction. I'm pretty sure I only paid like $7 for that one. Same way with this next item, also from an auction. This was an old early American press glass match wall mount holder. So it was like a glass holder that you would put on your wall to hold your matches, and had like the striker underneath, but this actually glowed under black light. It was really beautiful, and that sold for $128.49. And like I said, that did come from an auction. I sold this was by Marshall Pottery. It was a frog sculpture that sold for $12.99. That came from an auction, and it was on a tray of some other like frog related items that I won. Next item also came from an auction. This was a Wedgwood pink heart trinket box that sold for $49.99. One thing that I had learned with Wedgwood was the pink colored stuff tends to sell a little better than the typical blue colored stuff that you see. So that was just within my researching when this came up at an auction. I also sold this went to the Lundby Dollhouse. It was a piano and bench, so little dollhouse furniture pieces. Those sold for $19.99, and they came out of a dollhouse that I had purchased at a yard sale. This next one, someone purchased 2 Philosophy Pure Grace shower creams for a total of $69.98. Those came from the beauty auction where I was buying the Philosophy. I also sold a Royal Albert Old Country Roses vase for $9.99. I think this came from a yard sale. We sold a 1940 Masonic Bible for $19.99. I think this came from an auction, but I feel like it might have come from a yard sale. I can't remember. I also sold a vintage. This was actually from Six Flags. It was a Western cowhide wallet that sold for $19.99, and I won that at an auction for $1. Next item also won at an auction. This was for a check glass fruit basket lamp. That's over $275. At this auction, there were a couple of these old glass fruit bowl and fruit basket lamps, and for whatever reason, people weren't as interested in this one than they were with like the basket shaped ones. Everyone was going crazy over the basket shaped ones, but this one just wasn't as popular for some reason. And me, I'm thinking like, this one's the cool one, it's the unique one, because there's all these basket ones and this one was like the stand out different one. That's why I'm always talking about the weirder, the unusual. Those are the things that are going to sell. I mean, the baskets were worth money, don't get me wrong, but just the fact that no one seemed to really be too interested in that one kind of like blew my mind. We also sold a cast iron chocolate mold, two of them actually. The first one was some rabbits that sold for $109.99, and then the next one were frogs that also sold for $109.99. Those came from an auction. Also sold a Bob Googe parrot sculpture figure for $69.99, and that came from the auction. The next item was actually just a vintage Beavis and Butthead Sega game. Just the box sleeve. There wasn't a game, there wasn't a case, it was just the sleeve that would have went over the case. There's a lot of people out there that are collecting video games, have like their gamer rooms and stuff like that. So I thought this would be a really cool piece to potentially put in a frame or something so someone could hang it up in their gaming room, and someone did buy it for $9.99. Here's another pair of Birkenstock sandals. These were in the style called Tahiti. Those sold for $69.99, and they came from the same auction I had won a bunch of Birkenstock sandals at. Next item went to a subscriber named Arlene. She had purchased a Scargo pottery bowl for $39.99, and pretty sure we picked that up at the folk art auction. Next item came from a yard sale. This was a vintage from 1987 paperback horror book called Swan Song. I read this book and it was a crazy book. I was actually looking to see if they ever made it into a movie, because it would have been a really awesome movie. So I don't think that they ever did, but they need to, because it was a good book. Anyway, that sold for $12.99, and I paid 10 cents for it at a yard sale. I sold a Camrose and Cross necklace. So some of these jewelry pieces were like replicas of what Jackie Kennedy wore. This one here sold for $69.99. And these came from a yard sale, and I'd say I paid maybe $10 for that, 10 or less for that. Next item came from an auction. This was for a leather bag by a company called Pratesi, Pratesi, I think it was. It was over $199.99. I won that at an auction, and I'm pretty sure I paid like 20 bucks for it. There were other purses there that day at the auction, and they were like your typical purse brands, like your Coach and your Dooney and Burke and stuff like that. So of course people were like wanting those because, you know, they knew the brands and that kind of thing. But here again we go, there's this random, really amazing, kind of unique looking 100% leather made in Italy bag right there, and no one was really interested in it, and I sold it for $200, so it's just mind-blowing sometimes. Next we sold a Norman Brum copper sculpture of some goldfinch that sold for $225. That came from an auction. Eric had won a bunch of Norman Brum items, plate sculptures. We actually just sold another sculpture just the other day. We had someone do a local pickup on it, and he was actually asking if we had more, because we have more. We have a lot more. Eric pretty much bought like every single Norman Brum sculpture that day at the auction. I don't think he got all of them, but he got close to all of them. So we have plenty more where that came from. Next item was another Mary Hoyer doll, again in a floral type dress that sold for $99.99. Came from the same doll auction. Also sold some doll furniture. These were sold at Walmart for the My Life As dolls. It was like a bedroom doll furniture set. That sold for $29.99, and I got that on secret clearance a while back. I'd say I paid $5 or less for that. Next item, someone purchased a lot of 2 of these Philosophy Sheer Splendor conditioners for a total of $51.98. Came from the Philosophy Beauty auction. This is one of those Mexican wooden folk art pieces. This one was of a bat. This sold for $39.99. Came from the folk art auction, and I had won like a tray that had quite a few of these Mexican wooden pieces on. We sold a vintage from 1983 Transformers watch for $175. This came from an auction, and I do think Eric paid about $50 or so for it. We sold 2 Starbucks mugs. These ones were like more harder to find mugs. I think they were released in another country, potentially Japan, I want to say. The first one was a yellow rabbit one that sold for $85, and then the person also purchased the other one I had, which was a red rabbit mug, also for $85, and they both came from an auction. And the last thing that I have is another one of the Catherine Lily White Halloween ornaments of that cat head. I absolutely love this thing. I'm pretty sure I have one more of them left, so I'm so surprised no one has snagged it because it's so cute. I kept one for myself, actually, just because I love its little grinning face. But that sold for $9.99, and I paid $1 for it. So that is pretty much everything for this cha-ching. My last 31 days of sales is still down. I am down 7.8%, which is a little less than last time I did a cha-ching video. I do feel like sales are okay. They're okay. I feel every time I say that, every time I do a cha-ching, I just feel like they could be better. You know, just considering like the amount of stuff. Let me see if I have my phone on me, just to give you guys like an idea of the like amount of stuff that I have listed. I mean, in the grand scheme, it's not like a ton of stuff, but I have 3,215 active listings on eBay currently, and within 90 days I sold 614 items. So it's like there's so much stuff there that could be sold, but it's all about just finding that right buyer to come along and buy it. And sometimes it takes a while. It's not always a same day process. It's not always like, oh, someone will buy it next week. It might be, oh, someone will buy it next month. It might be, oh, someone will buy it next year, 2 years. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the type of seller who I don't mind having to hang on to stuff. I know some people like to, you know, once they get something in, they want it out like as quick as possible. And if that means like putting the price down to pretty much losing money, they'll still do it just to like get it out. But I'm the type of person that just wants to wait for the right buyer. The right buyer eventually does come along. And sometimes it really, like, I think is beneficial to do it that way. I guess not necessarily if you don't have the option to store it and stuff like that. But I definitely, you know, especially like when I first list something, I don't send offers on things right away. Like I like to just see if it'll sell at my asking price, and then if it doesn't, then I'll start sending out offers. Which brings me to something that I feel like I haven't talked about in a while. So a lot of my listings, like I said, I don't have best offer on them. I will at times like go through and send out offers on stuff. But I feel like I get a lot of messages like asking if I'd take less for something, which once I get a message like that and you know it's something that like I'm willing to do, then yeah, I'll send out like an offer typically within that message and things like that. But like I said, I don't have best offer on, so I guess maybe I should go in and maybe put best offer on some of my stuff. But I think for the most part, when someone wants something bad enough, that they'll message and ask for less. So I don't necessarily feel like you have to have best offer on everything, because people will still message you regardless, asking for it for less, regardless if you have best offer on or not. I'm trying to think if there's anything really that I wanted to talk about as far as eBay goes. Has anything been happening lately? I feel like a lot of people, especially on like the eBay Facebook group pages, are, you know, there's a lot of like people still, you know, complaining about sales being slow. I feel like hopefully, knock on wood, that, you know, once school starts back up and things like that, and we start getting into closer to the Christmas season, that things will start looking up for everyone. It's just a process of having to float through the slow times. I feel like some people just want to give up right away when things aren't selling. I think I saw someone post just the other day, like they had, I want to say they had like 20 some listings and they were upset that like nothing has sold yet. And it's like, it's such a process. Like only having 20 things listed, you definitely have to list more. I mean, I'm not saying you can't sell anything if you only have 20 things listed, but definitely when it comes to eBay, like the more things you have listed, the better chances of stuff is going to be selling for you. Especially like getting repeat buyers or people who want to buy more than one of your items, and you know, combining shipping and stuff like that. So definitely just keep listing. Just keep listing. That's like all, like the best advice I can give anyone as far as eBay goes. And if you feel like you're in some sort of like a sales slump, is just keep listing, because that's what's gonna do it. At least in my opinion, that is what will generate more sales for you. You know, when I started out, I didn't have a whole lot of listings, and now that I have so many listings, I mean, I have daily sales daily. Some days not as many, but still I'm having a sale. It's not like I'm going a day without a sale, or days without sales, or God forbid weeks without sales. So definitely having as much possible listed is just the best advice I can give anyone. But that's pretty much everything for this eBay cha-ching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought down in the comments. How are sales going for you? Are you still seeing the slumpiness of sales, or are your sales just like kicking butt and you're taking names right now because sales are through the roof? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe as well, and I will see you guys next time.